Okay, aside from the fact that he's an Oilers fan, which I know gravitates to all of us.
And again, we apologize to our Southern colleagues if this is putting you off any of the
abrasive,
any of the podcast content here.
We love all hockey fans. We just
There we go.
It, right? There were a number of key learnings that came out of what he was sharing. So Lorna, like, why don't you go first?
Yeah, you know, one of the big things that he talked about is that productive struggle.
Yeah.
That engaging with his schools and really thinking about how do we make decisions on our own, even within that framework. And sometimes we take the right steps and sometimes we don't. And Kristien talked about, which I loved, having cheat codes. We wish there were cheat codes. Well, we wish there were too, but there is definitely benefit from going through that productive struggle.
And I think Chris was pointing to the idea of, you know, in some contexts, cheat codes would be nice, but in the process of collaborative response, there's value to struggling to, you know, he talked about an implementation dip, and we know that implementation dips are a necessary part of change learning. You know, to me, it really goes back to that idea of what is truly learning and trying to take that to a system perspective of we're learning as a system, which is highly, highly complex and needs to be coordinated. I also resonated with what he said around, you know, as a principal and a vice principal, we're trying to figure this out on our own. But man, once you take the power of a system in other schools, it just takes that conversation to a next level, which is what they've done in Wetaskiwin Regional.
You know what, though, just to jump on that, the other challenge that many districts face is that succession planning, that once you've kind of gone through that implementation, and we typically work with school divisions for about 3 years, but at that third year, there is the question of what's next. How do we get to that place of this is just the way that we do things? And I think one of the things that really stood out to me from Kristien's conversation was the importance of district leaders understanding this work and being able to carry it beyond that implementation.
I think that brings their guiding coalition to the forefront, in that it's not top-down decision making. It really is getting the feedback. Kurtis, you talked about that loop, right? Putting it out there, getting it back. And so when it comes to this is how we operate, that group is going to be the group that says, we need to go back and revisit because our colleagues are saying, we need to go back and revisit because our students are doing certain things. They're going to notice. And I think that group that's advising the system level leadership is going to be key.
Well, and really what that's doing too is setting up layers of modeling so that as a system, we're modeling for the schools how we're engaging in a learning process. And then as school leaders go back and model for their staff, which then we hope has that reciprocal impact of, so teachers now within your classrooms, how do you start to model that cycle of learning? And again, I love the idea that it's not a clean process. There's struggle, there's tension, I guess, intellectual tension that we want to see when real learning is truly happening.
But always being able to have that cycle, that opportunities to come back to that learning as well. So with whether it's within whether it's within a coalition or whether it's within the district leadership team or even the admin team, like how do you keep that opportunity of that cyclical learning alive? Because I think you still need to create the intention of doing that.
So if we were going to summarize these key learnings, then we're talking about the value of the productive struggle, and through that, the impact on culture for staff, and how that productive struggle actually really enhances the real learning about the process And then the other pieces that we're talking about, the cyclical nature, like all of that again is still going to come out of that productive struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it's understanding and connecting change theory to collaborative response work. And again, when you're engaging in that, especially at a system level, there is iterative cycles that we're going to go through as a system in implementing this work. Again, Lorna and I have said many, many times, and you've heard this, Jen, simple in design, complex in actualization. And I think Kristien really hit the nail on the head today about navigating that complexity, but doing it in a way that's just valuing each and every learner in the process.
And, that productive struggle that we go through within our teams is actually building our collaborative culture through that struggle, which is really quite empowering as well.